After over a decade of waiting, land spears are finally coming to Guild Wars 2 in the Janthir Wilds expansion, and this last weekend we had the opportunity to beta test all the new land spear abilities available to each of the 9 different professions, and today I want to go over my top 10 favorite abilities added with these, yes, land spears. To clarify, this is not necessarily a meta video. Sure, how powerful and good an ability is going to weigh my opinion, but I care more about how the ability feels, how much fun you have using it, how it looks, and all the other aspects of an ability. So let's get started. In the number 10 spot is Blazing Barrage. This is the number 2 ability for Elementalists in Fire Attunement, where when we look at the Elementalist profession, there are a ton of new abilities added that we can look at. You got ones for all 4 attunements, as well as special Weaver ones for when you weave attunements. Looking at all the different skills, there are a wide variety that are super thematically cool for each of the attunements, but across them all, Blazing Barrage is my favorite. This is a relatively basic long-range skill where you can select specifically where you want it to go, which for some people this might be annoying to aim with, but I actually like that mechanic for the skill. Additionally, it hits up to 5 targets and deals base damage as well as some burning damage, where this kind of just serves as a basic ability you'd throw out alongside your auto attack, and visually it looks pretty cool as you leap up in the air, charge a fiery attack, and unleash a bunch of flaming spears at your enemy. It's simple but cool looking. In the number 9 spot is Solar Storm. This is the number 4 ability for Guardians. For anyone who has watched my channel before, you likely know that Guardian is my favorite profession and my main character is a Guardian. And unfortunately, I'm actually not a big fan of the spear for Guardian. Like overall, it's okay. A decently fun melee option with a somewhat interesting movement ability, but all of it just feels a bit lackluster. With that said, I do really enjoy Solar Storm. This is a massive AoE attack where you can choose where it goes, have a short charge time which you can move around while doing, and it deals a bunch of damage to enemies around it, where it plays into the new Illuminated mechanic where this ability deals more damage if you use it after another ability. Visually, it is a pretty cool ability where you throw your spear up into the air, you get a cool symbol coming out of the spear, and a bunch of shards rain from the sky down onto your enemies, where overall it's just a visually appealing and decently cool skill that I think is a fun addition to the Guardian. In the number 8 spot is Warclaw's Engage. This is the 4th ability for Rangers. On the surface level, this is a pretty basic movement ability where you can select a location, leap to that location, and deal damage to enemies there, where you have a bonus mechanic that you will deal more damage to enemies below the 50% health threshold. Where the big aspect of this skill that a lot of people have likely already noticed are the visuals. Whereas you're leaping, you have a giant ghostly Warclaw pouncing on your enemies, where on one hand, that is a lot of visual bloat and will not be fun in metas and whatnot, but on the other hand, this just looks super cool when you are out in the open world. Maybe make it a little smaller, and this is the spear skill that caught my attention the most from the original trailer for the Janthir Wilds, just because of how cool it looks and my immediate confusion with what animal this is. But Ranger has a special mechanic with their spear where you get stealth attacks just like a thief would, where the 2, 3, 4, and 5 abilities all have a special version of their skill that changes up what the skill is, typically making it more powerful for when you use it while in stealth, where you can gain stealth as a ranger in a variety of ways, but the Spear 5 ability, Panther's Prow, will give you stealth and swiftness, which is a good source of stealth. And when we look at Warclaw's Engage, it becomes Predator's Ambush, where it's the same idea, but you daze enemies you hit, which I really like because thematically, it is like you're catching your enemies off guard. Where alongside that, the visuals of the ability change, where the Warclaw spirit is now ghostly. In the number 7 spot is Barbed Spear. This is the Thief auto attack ability, where with a few different spear auto attacks, we see a really cool mechanic, where the auto attack will change depending on how close or how far away you are from your target. Where if you are up close, you will use your spear in melee range and slash away at enemies, but if you are far away, you will throw your spears towards your target to deal damage. You see this with the Ranger auto attack, Drake Swipe, and Bee Sting, which you likely saw in the previous section. We see this with the Revenant auto attack, Abyssal Strike, and then we see it here with Thief. Where out of the 3, Thief is my favorite because both of these auto attacks just feel super satisfying to use. Like honestly, really satisfying. I love running around and attacking enemies with the Thief Spear, where when you take into account all the other Thief abilities available on the spear, all which cost initiative, the Thief Spear just comes together to be a really satisfying weapon to use. It feels similar to Daredevil's Staff in a variety of ways, but also stands out from it slightly, especially with some of the ranged options. And it just feels good to run around the world, sniping people with the spear and then slashing them at close range. Which I should mention that you also have Ashen Assault, which is a stealth attack for Spear that is also a pretty cool ability where you stab your enemies multiple times super quickly. In the number 6 spot is Mind the Gap. This is the second ability for Mesmers, where this ability for me kinda combines a lot of the stuff that I said about Blazing Barrage, Solar Storm, and Warclaw's Engage in the number 10, 9, and 8 spots respectively, where this is a really fun, somewhat random AoE ability that is visually cool but potentially overwhelming, where I actually really like the Mesmer Spear skill set. I think all of them are fun, pretty mesmery, and potentially very powerful. However, I'm not someone who enjoys Mesmer a lot outside of portaling people to places and doing Tower Mesmer, so largely it just falls a little short for me with what I enjoy, but I've had a lot of fun with Mesmer Spear. But Mind the Gap alongside Mental Collapse, which is on the honorable mentions, are just two cool AoE abilities, where I particularly like Mind the Gap, especially with how awesome the visuals for this ability are. It's a lot, but it's short and sweet. Seeing this all the time in metas is definitely going to be an eyesore, but at least it's short. But when you're running around by yourself, it is a pretty cool visual, and it's just a fun ability to use. It deals a lot of damage, dealing more damage to enemies who are on the outer edge of the ability, creates a clone, and is on a short cooldown, so you can use this super often. In the number 5 spot is Wolf's Onslaught. This is the number 2 stealth ability for Rangers. We're going back to the Ranger profession. This is another skill that I like a lot, where if you remember back to what I was talking about with Warclaw's Engage, Ranger has special stealth abilities for all of the spear abilities outside of the auto attack, where the normal Ranger 2 ability is called Mongoose's Frenzy, where you swipe on your enemies in front of you twice, dealing a lot of damage to several enemies and causing vulnerability. Where visually it is cool with 2 green swipes, but when you enter stealth, the ability becomes more powerful, where you still deal those 2 swipes and cause vulnerability, but on top of those 2 swipes, you have a follow-up attack that is a powerful blow where you stab your enemy. Where this ability just feels super satisfying to use, even more satisfying than the unstealthed version. But there is a really cool visual touch on the follow-up attack where you have a ghostly wolf lunging at and biting your enemy in a similar fashion to the ghostly Warclaw during Warclaw's Engage. And I just love the looks of this skill, especially since I love wolf themes. And the number 4 spot is Wild Throw. This is the Primal Burst skill for warriors, where only warriors who are specialized as a berserker can access this weapon skill. Across the board, Spear on Warrior feels really fun to play. A lot of people were expecting Spear on Guardians to be similar to Paragons from the original Guild Wars, but it turns out to be that the Warrior Spear skills are similar to those Paragons, and it's pretty fun. All of them are generally fun to use, but nothing too spectacular. However, when you look at the burst skill, it is Harrier's Toss, where you jump up in the air and throw a spear at your targeted location, evading attacks and dealing more damage the more adrenaline you have. This skill is really satisfying to use, and I love dealing a massive amount of damage to enemies. But with Berserkers, you get the Primal Burst ability, which takes the traditional burst ability for each weapon and ramps it up a ton. When you go Berserk, you gain the Wild Throw ability, which will throw 7 spears at enemies, dealing damage and causing vulnerability to enemies. And this skill is just a lot of fun. You are throwing a ton of spears at the enemy you are fighting, and it's fun to use. But if you have ever played a Berserker, you will know that you can use this skill a lot every time you go Berserk. So you can throw 7 spears, deal a tiny bit of damage, and then throw 7 more. Over and over. It is just fun to shoot an enemy with a ton of spears over and over again in a short duration, and it is really fun to use. In the number 3 spot is Conduit Surge. This is the second ability for Engineers. This ability is super fun. All the different Engineer spear skills thematically revolve around lightning and energy. Alongside that, the spear skill set revolves around the idea of moving around quickly and staying close to your enemies, where with those ideas in mind and the different skills available to you, it is pretty fun to play. But the skill that really stands out to me is Conduit Surge. When you use the skill, you leap towards your target at a range of 700 and deal a ton of damage to them, but when you hit a target, they become focused for 10 seconds. And should you kill that target within 10 seconds, the 6-second cooldown of the skill is refreshed, so you can just instantly use it again. So in certain circumstances where you can kill a bunch of enemies super quickly, you can basically use Conduit Surge over and over, where this is particularly good in open world PvE, but definitely has its uses elsewhere, where even if you can't chain together a bunch of kills, it is still a fantastic movement ability that already has a pretty short cooldown, where altogether I have absolutely fallen in love with this skill, and it is just so much fun to use. And the number 2 spot is Perforate. This is the second skill for Necromancers. I had a very difficult time trying to decide if this one or if the number 1 skill is my favorite of the new land spear skills, and I decided that I like this one just a tiny bit less than the next one. Necromancer Spear is really fun with a lot of death and shadow magic themed abilities where you're basically just annihilating any enemy who dares stand in your way. Where I love the entire spear skill kit for Necromancers, but I particularly love Perforate. Basically, whenever you activate the skill, which has an 8-second cooldown, you will strike foes in front of you 7 times, meaning you're just stabbing your spear into any enemy multiple times, theoretically screaming die as you do so. And if you have any soul shards, which is a special spear mechanic for Necromancers that you get from the number 4 and 5 ability and are spent with the number 2 and 3 ability, your Perforate will deal more damage. And this ability is just super fun and fits in with the rest of the skills very well. I had a lot of fun during this beta just running around the world and using this ability against any enemy I come across. But now for the number 1 spot, for my favorite new land spear skill that is being added to the game in Janthir Wilds, and well, it has to go to Extirpate. This is another skill on the Necromancer, but it's the number 5 skill. Where like I said earlier, I was trying to decide if I like this one or Perforate more, and it just has to go to this one. Additionally, a lot of the ideas I said about Perforate are true with this one. It's very deathy and shadowy and fits in super well with the rest of the abilities. When you use this ability, you perform a wide swing that deals damage, gives you soul shards, removes boons from foes, and adds a special debuff called Extirpation to the enemy which will prevent boons from being applied to them. Where this is a super cool idea that probably won't be too powerful, but is still interesting. But the damage that you deal with the skill is pretty solid and I enjoy that, but the animation for this is just incredible. This does play back to the idea that I have been talking about throughout this video, and that is the concept of visual bloat, where there are a ton of massive new visuals added with these new spear skills, and this one is pretty big and will likely become super annoying to see in metas. However, I do think it is pretty subtle for what it is and isn't too obstructive, and it is also pretty short, and despite any negativity towards it, it just looks super cool. And after having played through each of the 9 different professions in the beta, I can safely say that Necromancer's Land Spear is my favorite of the 9 Land Spear sets, and that Extirpate is my favorite Land Spear ability. And that's my list. I hope you enjoyed. It was a lot of fun to explore all the new spear skills that are being introduced to the game in Janthir Wilds. There are some skills that I'm not a big fan of, some skills that are okay, some skills that I like quite a bit, which are on my honorable mentions list, and some skills that I like a lot, which made this list. I would love to hear which skill or which profession you are most excited to use or play down in the description. I hope you all are taking good care of yourselves. Have a good one, everyone.